Good evening, everyone. My name is Tony Cordy. I'd like to welcome you to Mount Alexander Shire Council. To start the official proceedings, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Jarrah country, of which the members and elders of the Jarrah community and their forebears have been custodians for many centuries and have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal. We acknowledge their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region. Please note, council meetings are audio and video recorded and are made available to the public via electronic media, including YouTube. We have all councillors present, and item 2 on the agenda, apologies, leave of absence. I would just note that I will be an apology for the next meeting of council, and Councillor Maltby, as Deputy Mayor, will chair that meeting. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda, declarations of interest, conflicts of interest, councillors. Councillor Driscoll.
Yes, Mayor. Item 10.3.3, Workspace Australia, which I'm chairman, has put in an expression of interest in this process, so I have a conflict.
Thank you for that, Councillor Driscoll. Any other conflicts, councillors? Nothing else to report. Thank you, governors. Confirmation of minutes. Got someone to move the motion? Councillor Driscoll.
The minutes of the 20th of April 2021.
Okay, I've got a seconder, please. Councillor Anir. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Acknowledgements. We're not going to acknowledge anyone tonight. Okay. We will acknowledge our CEO and directors and governors are here with us this evening, so thanks very much to them. Okay. In relation to public question time, we've received a couple of questions electronically, and I'll deal with those in a moment. But what I'd like you to do is, when you come up to speak to us, advise us who you are and whether you're representing an organisation or yourself, and you have 3 minutes to speak. And please, if you're given a wind up in the 3 minutes, please finish up. You can ask a question, but please understand it's not a debate. And if you could wait for a moment when you finish speaking, in case councillors have a further question for you. In terms of questions of council, our council governance rules are very specific, and I'll just read an extract. 12.1.5 of our rules. Questions of council may be on any matter except if it A, relates to a matter outside the duties, functions and powers of the council, B, is defamatory, indecent, abusive, offensive, irrelevant, trivial or objectionable in language or substance, C, is aimed at embarrassing a councillor or a member of council staff, D, relates to personal matters, E, relates to the personal hardship of any resident or ratepayer, F, relates to industrial matters, G, relates to contractual matters, H, relates to legal advice, I, relates to a planning matter already listed on the council meeting agenda, J, relates to matters affecting the security of council property, or K, relates to any other matter which the council considers would prejudice the council or any person. And the reason I've gone through those this evening is one of the questions that we've received, or I've received electronically, it fails on 3 criteria there, and so we'll not be dealing with that. But basically, it does relate to the planning matter of the music event at Allendale Road. Now, the latest information on that event is that event has been relocated to Newstead, so that's a good news for any objectors from the Elphinstone area. But this matter has already been determined by council as it's a planning matter, so we're not going to take further questions on this evening. So that's why, and it's something as mayor that I determine what questions we will and won't hear, and that's why we're not dealing with that matter. The other thing I would note in relation to public question time, item 7 on the agenda is hearing submissions in relation to the sale of the land at Wesley Hill. So it's 10.3.3 of the agenda. So what we'll do is we'll deal with regular public question time, but if you have a submission or a question in relation to that matter, if you could hold it over until item 7 on the agenda, please. Okay, so we'll go ahead with public question time now. Do I have a motion to suspend standing orders, Councillor? Councillor Maltby, do I have a seconder? Councillor McClure, all in favour? Motion carried. Okay, so who would like to ask a question of council this evening that's not in relation to the workspace? Sorry. Yes, would you like to come up to the rostrum, please?
Ron Corthen from Vice President of the Camp Reserve Committee. Thanks for your time. I'm here to ask or inquire the Camp Reserve Master Plan, which is adopted 6 votes to 1 on September 15, 2020. I've been told by Marie Edwards Council isn't reviewing to endorse or not to endorse the plan until the July meeting. If this is correct, where does the decision leave the plan if it is not endorsed? If it is endorsed, is there plans for actions to get tangible outcomes ready to go? In the budget, I could only see reference to progress the plan, which I don't fully understand the meaning of. There are numerous funding opportunities available which could be applied for Rural Development Victoria, Cricket Victoria, AFL Victoria, to name a few. Once again, thanks for your time.
Thanks for that, Ron. If you can just wait a moment, we'll see if I can get the CEO or one of the directors to speak to that issue. Acting Director Jude Holt is going to speak to it, so just hang on a moment. Thanks, Jude.
Hello, Ron. Thanks for your question. In relation to the first part of the question, the councillors have, as you know, endorsed a plan, and we do have a new council. And the new council has heard from staff, supporters of the plan, and people who aren't supportive of the plan. And it is intended that we will bring a report back to the July council meeting for further consideration of the council after day, and for the new council to endorse or to improve that plan. In relation to the budget items, I'm going to have to take that on notice unless the CEO can help me.
Thanks, Director. That's right, Ron. There is a provision, as you say, in the draft budget, which is out for consultation as well. So there is an opportunity to make a comment about that. But there is a provision in there to notionally progress the plan. It is intentionally open because council wants to clarify its position in relation to the master plan. But at the same time, whichever way that decision goes in July, council wishes to see whatever is decided progressed, and that requires an allocation in the budget. So there's been a provision in there for that purpose. You'll find out what it's for in July when council makes a decision on its master plan.
Thanks for that. Councillors, has anyone got further questions for Mr. Cawthorne? Looks like we're all good. Thank you very, very much for coming along, Ron.
No worries. Thanks.
Next speaker. Any further questions? Like we might have some people here to talk about workspace. So No further questions. We'll move on to, okay. My apologies. There was one further item, and it relates to an earlier decision that council made in relation to duck hunting on Cancurran. And there's quite a preamble to it, but I'm not going to read that out. But the main part of it is, I'll just go to the question. Given shooting is set to commence 8 a.m. May 26, and assuming council agree that residents, ratepayers and visitors to our shire are just as important as those in Mildura and Bella, or Wendouree or Waroona for that matter, where they also don't allow shooting. 1, have council approached Goulburn Murray Water and or ministers since Thursday? 2, how can council and how will council, 2 separate questions, urgently represent the interests of ratepayers and ensure that bird shooting does not take place this May the 26th, nor ever after? So that's a question, and I would ask the CEO, could you comment on that, because it is a matter that was discussed at the previous council. So I'll hand over to CEO Darren Fuzzard. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. So the first question was, have council approached Goulburn Murray Water and or ministers since Thursday? The answer is no. The document that was tabled with us councillors was intended to be a petition. It's been reviewed and does not meet the requirements as a petition. So that's why you will not see it tabled to you as a petition tonight. No other action has been taken, given that you have not had an opportunity to consider that matter prior to now as this council. Notwithstanding that, there is a resolution of council that goes back to 2019, where council resolved to advocate for the banning of duck hunting at Cancurran Reservoir, to write to the Minister for Agriculture, the Minister for Energy, Environment and Climate Change, and the Victorian Game Management Authority, further regulation with the view to the closure of the hunting areas at Cancurran Reservoir, and write to the CEO of Goulburn Murray Water as the landowner, asking they enforce the no camping policy on their reserve. All of those resolutions of council and mayor were carried out. We did write to all of those people, and without going through all of the detail, the minister referred us to GM Water as being best placed to determine whether duck shooting should or should not continue on the land around Cancurran, and GMA, the Game Management Authority, has been responsible for regulating duck hunting, to refer the matter to them for that responsibility. We received responses back from both Game Management Authority and Goulburn Murray Water, who Game Management Authority was certainly surprised, I would have to say, that there were concerns raised there. They have no records of there being matters of concern at Cancurran. As a result of that, did follow that matter up with Vic Pole at the time, who also had no records of concerns being raised in relation. This is in 2019, councillors. So there was no further opportunities or leads to follow their councillors, and really that has not occurred. Goulburn Murray Water are the people who have the ability to determine whether duck shooting continues on that land or not, is what all the other authorities and minister have said. To date, they haven't felt that that's an appropriate decision to make. So that's about where it sits at the moment, councillors.
Could I just ask, CEO, through you, has Goulburn Murray Water made a decision to ban duck shooting on any other of the waters that it controls, to your knowledge?
I don't know. I understand, sorry.
There is a place in Lorraine.
Okay,
Thanks.
thanks for that, councillors. I think we've resolved that matter. Councillor Gardner, you want to speak?
Yeah, I did, for a couple of reasons. One, I've received a few emails about this. So I wanted to actually clarify something because there seems to be some misinterpretation. One, I think Aaron has indicated, we don't own that land. So we can't ban it. So I had some emails which I didn't respond to because of the way their language, but we don't own it. We don't ban it. I was the sponsor of this particular motion and I will stand by it, and I did it for reasons of safety concerns raised by residents and stuff that's going on there. Apart from what Darren has said, I'm also on a local committee chaired by GMW, and up to this point, they've refused or have not undertaken a community survey, which they had said they would do to gauge the local community's willingness on banning duck hunting, so they haven't done that. And I've also approached and taken up with our local member as well. So I think there's been quite a lot of lobbying on this matter. So I just want to add that to the record.
Thanks for that, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Mulby saying.
My question would be to the CEO. The 2019 motion from the council specifically spoke about King Current, not the whole Shire. That's correct. Some of the information given to us by the letter writer suggests it was the whole Shire.
Thanks for that, Councillor Mulby. Okay, councillors, we'll move on to item 7. So we're going to hear submissions in relation to 10.3.3, and Councillor Driscoll has got declared a conflict of interest, so he'll leave the room. Thank you, Councillor Driscoll. Is there anyone in the gallery that would like to speak to item 10.3.3 of the agenda in relation to the land at Wesley Hill? Someone up the back there, if you'd like to come forward, thank you.
I was told that I could give you a piece of paper to have in front of you. Is that still okay?
Governance will collect that. Thank you, Gussie.
Thank you.
If you could speak into the microphone so I can hear you, thank you.
My name is Faye White. This is 3 minutes start now. Or? My name is Faye White. I'm from 42A McGrath Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I represent 4 households. In 2010, when this urban design and landscape guidelines document for the Wesley Hill estate was produced, the council then had a clear vision. They didn't want a conventional estate which they described as cluttered and visually chaotic. Instead, their ideal was for a highly desirable and attractive place that used vegetation as an integrating factor with surrounding land, from the railway line to the residential zone. Their ideal was that buildings should not exceed 50% of the lots, and the green corridors of native trees and shrubs would enhance the streets and soften the forms of the buildings. Council was then so committed to that vision, they stated their intention to implement the landscape treatments of the streets, the linear buffer reserve to the north, and the creek prior to the sale of lots. We're wondering if this commitment still stands. As neighbouring residents, we're very appreciative of the linear buffer reserve wildlife corridor along our back laneway. We would like to see the creek reserve revegetated to the same standard, and the next stage of the whole development proceed along the excellent guidelines in this document. We accept the zoning of the business park and welcome new businesses there. But it would be easy to drop the ball. Adjoining residents, business owners and their workers, and the wildlife that currently use the estate will all be affected by the next stage. Can council give some guarantee that if sold by private treaty, the original urban design guidelines will be upheld and the buyers will be directed to it, and that the design and development overlay must requirements be strictly adhered to? Some of them are on that sheet. That a high quality integrated development will be achieved and a piecemeal and visually chaotic outcome be avoided. Our households are ready and willing to consult with council in cooperation with the current responsible businesses who are also our neighbours and indicating that they're interested in sustainable businesses. And we could work with community groups like Landcare to work together to achieve the next stage that is in fact innovative, creative and connected as we're trying to be. Our Shire website states that as a Shire, we're strongly committed to environmental sustainability and we pride ourselves on our environmental leadership. Wesley Hill Business Park is an example of exactly where the rubber hits the road. What will it take to achieve a world-class development? We ask that council lead here, take enough time prior to sale to rekindle the vision for this business park and undertake creative consultation with all the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Just, if you can just hang on for a moment, please. Acting Director Holt, would you like to respond to the couple of questions?
One was about the intention in these guidelines to implement the landscape treatments of the streets, the linear buffer reserve, which has been beautifully done, and the creek reserve prior to the sale of lots, because we're wondering about the timing of the sale of these lots. So does this commitment to do that, implementing the landscape treatments, etc., still stand?
Yeah, look, I think thanks very much for that. What we'll do is we'll give everyone the opportunity to speak first. Thank you.
Okay. There was another question in there, but did you want that too? No.
Yes, go with your second question.
Fine, sorry. Yeah, can the council give some guarantee that if sold by private treaty, these particular guidelines and a high quality development will in fact happen? How will they still have some control? Will council still have some control over an integrated development that's not piecemeal and turns out very ugly? It's maybe a main question.
Sorry, Mayor, if I could just answer and just clarify the purpose of this particular part of the meeting, Faye.
Yeah.
It's not a question and answer process for you of the council. The opportunity that's been provided here is for the councillors to hear what your concerns are, or your delight on the proposal, however that may be, so that when they come back, that they will be considering a matter later on. And I shouldn't preempt their decision on that matter there, but what it indicates is council wants to hear from the people who want to speak to them and speak to their submissions tonight, and at the next meeting we'll make a decision having heard all of those different views. So the questions that you're asking, we will take note of those and we will address those as part of the consideration at the next meeting, as opposed to just giving you an answer right here and now. I hope that makes sense.
Fine. Thank you.
Thanks for your submission. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name's Jane Forrest and I live on the laneway that abuts up to lot 7 of the business park. I wasn't going to speak tonight, so it might be a bit rough. Firstly, I'd like to say I don't think this is about the business park versus the residents, or the residents versus the business park, or the council. I think it's actually about all of us having an outcome which is enhancing to each party individually and to the whole. And in saying this, I'm happy to have businesses come to Castlemaine, the right sort of businesses. And the ones that are there now seem to want to bring businesses that are environmentally sustainable and things that will fit in with our lifestyle here and the neighbourhood of Wesley Hill. And to this argument, I would like to say that I like all the lots that are for sale are fine, except for lots 7, 6 and 5. Now, 7, 6 and 5, if there ever was a piece of land begging not to be developed, it's this piece of land. If you live in this area and you see all the people that walk on it and the wildlife that use it, and my office looks over that piece of land day in, day out, so I see what the enormous amount of phenomenal wildlife and bird life which is actually using piece of land. But I believe that there's a unique opportunity here for all parties, because Landcare has very, very kindly come forward and said they would help us to revegetate the creek bed there. And since the business park is going the way of sustainable environmental businesses that they're trying to encourage, this would be a fabulous showcase, basically, for the business park to say to their clients, who will also be shopping there because they want this sustainable environmental aspect to their purchasing. They will say, well, come and see, you know, we basically are practicing what we preach. We're putting our money where our mouth is, and they'll take them down there and they'll see this incredibly beautiful land care restoration with the help of all the volunteers of Wesley Hill, because we all love where we live. I just think it would be a win-win for the business park, especially because they'd be overlooking a very beautiful restoration of that piece of land. And if anyone walks down the Gold Trail, they'll see just what a wonderful job Landcare does and are doing. There's signs there of all the native wildlife and all the bird life, so you can be educated while you walk along. My neighbour Yvonne and I go walking there, as most of Wesley Hill does. That said, that would help the business park incredibly. Next up are the residents. Now, this is a unique piece of land. It's not like any other piece of land for sale in the business park. They're all rectangles and squares. This piece of land, those three pieces of land, form a rough triangle, very narrow at one end. And it's really, it just begs to be developed, not to be developed, really. The architecture of a triangle is two long sides. Right, along those two long sides are all residential properties. Nowhere else in the park are there that many residential properties abutting both sides. There's the laneway for one side of the triangle and up Good Street for the other side of the triangle. They are all looking over this piece of land and very, very close to this piece of land, which I think if it was repurposed, it would be very, very good for the residential people here, because really at the moment it's going to infringe very badly on their privacy, their peace and quiet, their ambience, and maybe even their property values. So I think it's worth looking at having a win for the business park, having a win for the people who live there, and third and lastly, I think it would be a win-win for the animals. At the moment, that is already a wildlife corridor. Those that don't live there and don't walk on it would probably not see this, but on a day-to-day basis, there are many, many groups of animals that use that wildlife corridor. And so that would maintain that. In fact, it would improve it with the Landcare's help with developing the creek bed and the actual piece of land. And I just think it would be wonderful to have a green zone there, a buffer zone between industrial and residential, because that is what's happening all over Australia now. Councils are getting on board with this green zone business, wildlife corridors to stop the decimation of our wildlife. And I think it's a win-win: business park, residential, animals and environment. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for that. Next speaker.
Mr. Mayor, my name is Jim Norris. I'm a director of Workspace. Workspace has made a submission that we would be interested in having a discussion with Council about the future of those blocks on the industrial estate. I've got Rebecca Dempsey with us tonight. She's our CEO, so if there are any questions that councillors might have, perhaps this is an appropriate time. As you all know, you've worked with Workspace successfully over many years as a council, and you continue to do so. And we are involved heavily at the moment with the Edith Street school site. We also, as an organisation, run a number of industrial sites around central Victoria. Our two largest sites are located at Eagle Hawk with some 20 factories, and at Gisborne with some 12 factories, which we license to start-up businesses. The model we use for our industrial sites is to provide factories, start-up businesses based on a factory, a smallish factory with a yard and the appropriate facilities, including an office, toilet, wash area, three-phase power, etc. Like all our centres, these businesses are provided with free business support and advice, mentoring as required in whatever area is required in order to get them on their feet. They worked with us for some 3 years, and at that point, when they're grown-up businesses, they move on. And in many cases, they buy, build or lease commercial space of their own. And probably the prime example of that is down in Gisborne, where from those 12 factories that we have located there, much of the Gisborne industrial estate has been populated by ex-Workspace clientele. Workspace would seek funding for building the factories from the state and federal government to be used along with Workspace's own contribution as needed. We're not expecting council to contribute to the construction of the factories at all, and we're open to discuss with council any proposition in relationship to the blocks of land that council may consider as worth your consideration. Other sites like Eagle Hawk, where we have the 20 sites, were vacant land that the City of Great Bendigo, for example, has leased to us since 1998, free of charge. I think it might be $1 a year. The cost to council is nothing, as Workspace covers all costs, including maintenance, upkeep, rates, etc., on a day-to-day basis. I don't think there's much more that I need to say unless council has had questions. Probably the one thing I would say about the City of Greater Bendigo's site there is, of course, they still own the site. We built 20 factories there. We can't take the factories away.
Thanks for your submission, Jim. Councillors, have we got any questions for Jim? Councillor McClure?
Thanks, Jim, thank you for your report. Jim, can you give us a feel for the type of businesses that established, like what sort of industries they are? Or
there's a wide range of businesses that we deal with. It's almost unlimited. Okay. We're not talking heavy industry, I might say, but we've had businesses established through our various factories that range from, at the moment, there's an ornamental plaster works up in Bendigo. So they'll make your ornamental cornices and the like, and they'll do one-offs. So they're a specialty manufacturer that way. We've got some of the people that you'll see on roadworks that do the stop signs and things like that. We've got joiners, cabinet makers. It's an extraordinarily wide range of practical skills.
generally light industry type?
Oh, yes, yeah. Light industry.
Thanks for that, Jim. Councillor Maltby's got a question.
Jim, at the end of 3 years, do they all leave or?
Look, on occasions, we will, as a board, decide to allow people to stay. I've got to say, in the case of Gisborne, it's a great example. We might have somebody that's got a planning application in, it hasn't come through, they're definitely moving into a factory that they're going to build, but they just, and we don't want to throw them out on the street. The other circumstance under which we might allow somebody to stay is that we can see that they're just on the verge of cracking it to be viable. We're not going to throw somebody out from that perspective. We want to make sure that when we send people out, they're on their feet, they're viable, and they're up to it.
Thanks.
Thanks for that, Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, thanks. I've got two questions. So it's like 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, 13 and 14. Are you indicating that you are going to buy these? Is that what?
No, and
so this is where I'm going. I'll come out and ask you. So from here next week we go to a thing, we dispose it. So I think the process then is we put in the paper and we get submissions and we make a decision on council in terms of that. Is that correct? Close enough. So I'm assuming what you're going to be proposing is you lease us the land, we build stuff on for free. Is that correct? Around about that.
The model would be up to discussion between
Okay.
council and ourselves, but
Right.
in general, the model has been that council and other bodies, such as the Gus Main Hospital, have allowed us to have properties which we then maintain.
Okay.
It's a general thing. Can I just add that we probably are not interested in 5, 6 and 7 because of the geotechnical complications of building on the sites.
Well, that was my next question. Okay.
Sorry.
So I suppose my other question is to officers. Obviously, Workspace is looking at a community initiative which has a benefit to community. The people who are neighbouring it possibly could have a similar case, so they could also make a similar submission. If they had gone out.
Councillor Anderson.
Thanks, Jim, for that. That's very interesting. And I'm glad to hear that you build the buildings and we keep the land. And we have a reasonable lease arrangement there. That's your proposal. What my wife has given us is a reminder that we do have a fairly tight or pretty, tight, what's the word? Developed design and development overlay. I remember this coming in, and I remember at the time there was a bit of, not quite outrage, but really, we're going to ask this of people going into a business park to do all of this. And she's saying we want to hold you to it. My question is, if council came to an arrangement with Workspace to take over a few lots, would you be able to comply with the requirements of this design and development overlay, make it look beautiful, keep it looking beautiful?
Councillor Henderson, we're a community organisation. We're a not-for-profit organisation. We work cooperatively with the organisations which we gain buildings and or land from. And so, it's a cooperative endeavour. We want to benefit this community by bringing in businesses and making them viable. We also want to be able to work with yourselves on this project. So look, I don't think there's any doubt. If there's a hoop to be jumped through, hold it up, we'll let it go.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jim. We'll hear from anyone else that wants to make a comment in relation to this matter. Looks like we're done, all done, finished. Councillors, can I have a motion to resume standing orders? Thanks. Councillor Maltby. Seconded, Councillor Henderson. All in favour? Thank you. Thank you very much to the people that spoke this evening. Can we get Councillor Driscoll back in now, please? Okay, thanks very much for the people that attended this evening. Petitions and letters, we have had one, as mentioned earlier, we have had one petition that didn't actually meet with the requirements, so we will deal with that, and what will happen will be dealt with as an operational matter. Thank you. Item 9, committee reports is nil. Item 10, community grants. We have a recommendation there, councillors. Do I have a motion? Councillor Driscoll.
Yes, the council adopts recommendations for the funding for the 2021 Community Grants Program, round 1.
Have a seconder, please. Councillor Gardner. Any objectors? No. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Driscoll?
Thanks, Mayor. The grants have been given to a good cross-section of the community, so I'm pleased with that. And the only thing I would say is that when they do get advertised in the paper, make sure that groups do put their hand up, because it's a good opportunity for small organisations. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Driscoll. Councillor Gardner, would you wish to speak?
Yeah. I mean, this is part of Council's ongoing grants program, so it's really great to see We received 19 eligible applications, and there were 18 were funded. And I mean, the grants program is a really great program by this council, and it does support small organisations which make a big difference in our communities. And so I know for me, there's a number in Melbourne, which I'm glad to see. Mount Alexander Cycling, Camp Curran, the Steam Packet, which is they do concerts at the museum and at the railway station. The Archive Club's getting some, Southern Cross, and the Bowls Club, it's the new Bowls. So this is a great little program, I think, that really benefits and gets the organisations who probably with these small amount of money makes a big difference.
Thanks for that, Councillor Gardner. Other councillors, anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Henderson.
I'd like to thank our officers. I think they're just, doing a really good job in assessing, first of all, helping people put in their applications, getting them compliant, conforming with the requirements, with the guidelines, and coming up with the goods. I just want to point out to my fellow councillors that we have 18 of those. We've got sizable numbers of sporting groups, so no one can say we're just supporting the airy-fairy rules. We've got some Untitled Cycling, Sailing Club, Golf Club, bowling, what else have we got on the page? We've got Clay Target Club, Pony Club, and another bowling club. It's not bad, really, is it? A couple of land care groups in there, and everything from Sophie Delightful Presents, Diverse Communities and Social Services, Curbside Carnies, to the Southern Cross Lodge, which I believe is in the Summit Lodge, getting a landscaping project up and running. So who says we're not a diverse community? Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Henderson. I would also acknowledge the work of our officers in relation to community grants. It's a lot of work, and they also do good work in helping people get organised to apply for grants. So fantastic work, thank you. There being no objections, I declare the matter carried. Thank you. (10.2.1) Determined to enter into lease with Bendigo Kangan Institute for 67 Templeton Street, Castlemaine. Councillors. Councillor Maltby.
I'll move that the council notes that no submissions were received to the advertised intention to enter into a lease with Bendigo Kangan Institute for 65 to 67 Templeton Street, Castlemaine. 2, the council determines to enter into a new lease of up to 5 years with the incumbent tenant. And 3, council authorises the chief executive officer to negotiate terms and signs all documentation required to execute the lease in accordance.
Thanks for that, Councillor Maltby. Do I have a second? Councillor McClure is going to second. Any objection, councillors?
No, but I've got a question. Can I ask it now? Rather than
Yes.
it's nothing serious. It's just that in the executive summary, it does say that in a 29 scheme, that a representative of whatever they call it, the TAFE, advised that a greater number of classes were being offered, great, and requested to enter a new lease, ongoing provision of services. They also proposed that part of the premises would be subtenanted. I was just interested in if we were privy to who the subtenants might be, given that we've got Community House over the road now gives a home to various subtenants such as the Centrelink service there. We know? Are we aware of any sub? I'm just interested in who else might be coming in under that lease. No. Okay, thank you.
No. Thanks for that, Councillor Henderson. Do we have, we've got a seconder. Does anyone else wish to speak to this? Councillor Maltby, do you wish to speak to it?
Well, I only suggest that it's a very good outcome that they're committed for another 5 years and will provide the services they do for the community. If they're subtenanting, and the lease, they will have to tell you who the subtenant is.
Councillor McClure,
No, nothing to add. It's a good outcome for the building. So very good support.
Yeah, I would just note that there is flexibility in that agreement, but it's fantastic that we've got an ongoing tenant with the TAFE and doing a lot of great work in our community. So I hope that continues. There being no objection, I declare the matter carried. Thank you. Ten point two, land exchange agreement, Welshman's Reef. Councillors. Councillor Driscoll.
I recommend, as in the recommendation that's printed.
Thanks for that, Councillor Driscoll. Do I have a seconder, please, councillors? Councillor Mulvey. Any objection? Councillor Driscoll, would you like to talk to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. A land exchange agreement was prepared to regularise the deviation of the extension of Gordon's Road to Sears Road as is currently in use, and the continuation of Sears Road as is currently in use in Welshman's Reef. At the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 20th of August 2019, Council resolved that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to sign and affix the common seal to the land exchange agreement between Mr. Brasser and of Welshman's Reef and the Council, and this approval is now sought to finalise this deviation, so it's just basically giving it the right to go.
Thanks for that, Councillor Driscoll. Any other councillors wish to speak on the matter?
Just to say, it's good to see the end of this matter. I think at the time there was a bit of, oh, but who's getting more land than we are? But I really don't think it matters that much. I think it's great that we can sort out these anomalies in favour of everyone. Maybe just sort out the boundaries where we think they've been for a very long time.
Thanks for that, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Gardner.
Just a quick, just to highlight so people don't think we're getting away free land or whatever. This consent was sought and obtained from the minister, so it's been a thorough process as well.
Thanks for that, Councillor Gardner. There being no objection, I declare the matter carried. Thank you. 10.3.1, planning application PA 034/2021, 24 Doveton Street, Castlemaine. Councillors. Councillor Gardner.
Yeah, I'd like to move a motion as printed, and just for clarification, that's to issue a notice of decision to refuse the planning permit.
Councillors, do I have a second for the motion? Councillor Henderson. Any objection to the motion? Councillor Gardner, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't an easy one. I mean, basically we have a long-standing business which is relocating due to the proposed supermarket development. So the podiatrist, who's been in town for a very long time and provide really good services to the local community, are seeking to open up an alternative site in Castlemaine. And so, I mean, for me, this is why it's hard. I am supporting the officer's recommendation, though, not to provide a permit because it is in a residential street and it will impact neighbour amenity. There was certainly they were going to build a car park out the back and there'd be more car parks in the street. Part of the applicant's justification was that there were other businesses in and around, which, other than the corner shop, which has been there for a very long time, the others are sort of home-based businesses, so they're not a full-on commercial trading business. I think, so really, it is zone residential, so that's an important component for me. I also think the current housing market, it's really just not justifiable to turn houses into a commercial aspect and take a housing off the market. Particularly with, I'm not saying it's going to resolve or impact anyway on housing affordability. But obviously it's one less house on the market. It's a nice house, I admit, so it's the higher end. But really, I don't think as a council we should be encouraging the commercialisation of residential properties when there are still vacant commercial properties around town that can probably be used and other zones. I mean, I do hope that the podiatrist can find a better and alternative location than in a residential street. And so that's why I'm moving this motion and hope that my fellow councillors will support it.
Thanks for that, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Henderson, do you wish to speak? Councillor Driscoll.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to note that this is actually allowed under the planning scheme as a medical business, and I'd hate to see this successful business over the last 40 years leave town. I'm involved with a few businesses in town, and it's very difficult to find commercial premises, in my opinion. So I know that they've been looking around. It's a very quiet business. They've got car parks out the back, and I disagree that it's going to interfere with the local amenity, but that's my views.
Thanks for that, Councillor Driscoll. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Henderson.
Can't have my say there. Yeah, look, I think Councillor Gardner's raised the main point. So I just would like to stress that the heritage, you know, I've got my band heritage badge on for various reasons, but if I can spot heritage when it's staring me in the face, and I can read heritage reports. And I would just like to quote from our Council's Heritage Advisor's response to this application, to take something from it, which says, the streetscape of Doveton Street is within the core heritage residential area of Castle Lane, one street beyond the highly significant Campbell Street Heritage Precinct. It is an intact, historic residential streetscape with no commercial interventions of signage and businesses. The proposal to convert an historic house and heritage garden into exclusive use health centre will have a highly detrimental impact on the identified heritage features, elements, landscape and vegetation and urban design components that make up the significance of the heritage precinct. This is a precious street. Doveton Street has always been one of my favourites. It's a walk down it is just a joy. I can never aspire to live in it these days, but I can aspire to enjoy walking down it. And once a building is turned into a commercial premises, such as a podiatrist, it will remain one. Podiatrists might retire, might move on to bigger premises. There will be another medical centre in there that could get busier, could get bigger. It would always, and even though the house facade will remain, I'm sure, could remain extremely well maintained, it will cease to be a family home. It will cease to have life in it 24 hours a day. It will cease to be a home. And that is intrinsically what Doveton Street is. It's a street of homes and it must be protected. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Mobley.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm drawn between this and no here, but I think it's going to help me make a decision. This is what I've just read again and again. Are we going to turn Doveton Street into another commercial street eventually after we gain one practice there? Is some of the forestry businesses that have been shifted because of the proposed development going to say, well, Doveton Street's probably a good closer spot, we better go and move up there? Are we planning, or have we ever thought about, the council previous planning for the future of the CBD? I can understand that the business won't attract major people all the time. I can understand that traffic won't be a major issue because they're providing a car park, but my concern now is are we setting up the Duckman Street, that block especially, will become a fully commercial street, a block. And if that's the case, I would probably be agreeing with Councillor Henderson at the current thought process.
Thanks for that, Councillor Maltby. Other councillors wish to speak on the matter? We have it, we'll put it to the vote then. Thank you, councillors. Those in favour of the motion as printed? Those against? Declare the matter carried. Thank you. Move along to 10.3.2. Planning application for Pittman Street, Chewton. Councillors, do I have a motion? Oh, Councillor Maltby's clicked off the block there. Here's Councillor Maltby. You've got a motion, have you?
I have, Mr. Mayor. I'll move an alternative recommendation to what the officers recommended. And each councillor has a copy in front of them. And that is the council issues a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the demolition of an existing dwelling and associated outbuildings and construction of a dwelling and garage at 51 Pittman Street, subject to the conditions printed, excepting condition 3, which talks about a record of the dwelling. I'll explain that.
Strike out
Section
3. Councillors, we've got a motion there from Councillor Maltby. Do we have a seconder? Councillor McClure. Any objectors to the motion? Yes, we've got objectors. So, Councillor Maltby, would you like to talk to the motion, please?
Right. So, previous council, this has been going on for some time, from my understanding. It is an old building, but it's been altered that many times in its life that I can't find, in my opinion, much of a miner's cottage left there. The applicant has gone to great depth in providing records, submissions, and building a house within character of the location. If it was a significant miner's cottage, and I could take you for a drive around Chewton and the whole district and show you many, many more that are worthy of saving, I wouldn't be proposing this motion. It has passed its lifetime and it really couldn't be restored properly anyway. The condition 3 spoke about a record of the dwelling. The applicant has already had an architectural report, a historical report, and other things that I'm sure he will provide to the Council Planning Department and Heritage Victoria if they ask for it. And they've been done by professional people.
Thanks for that, Councillor Maltby. Councillor McClure, would you like to speak now or later?
Oh, no, I'll speak now, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support Councillor Maltby's motion. I had a chance to visit the place last week and for quite a period of time and was a bit appalled at the state of the dwelling. I mean, it is far beyond restoration. Nearly every component in it, particularly the structure and the frame, would have to be replaced to make it livable. And I don't know what would be left of it to call it a restoration. I mean, it's not in a good condition. And, it may have been in a reasonable condition 20 years ago, but it's not today, and I think it's time for it to be removed. And a nice house that's been proposed to be put in its place. I'm happy that they've incorporated the stone building at the back. They're going to keep that, use it for a pizza oven or some other piece, so at least there is some restoration in the proposal, but the house is far beyond any restoration work in my view. So happy to support Bill. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor McClure. Councillor Gardner, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt this is a really, really tricky one, and even You know, I've driven around there a couple of times, had a look. I didn't actually, unfortunately, get time to go inside the book. And even sitting here, I'm still thinking about it. Yes, I acknowledge that the reality is this is a building that is past its time and is probably uninhabitable. But at some point, I mean, if we turn around and offer permits on these properties, I mean, there's a possibility people can sense that, you know, you have these buildings which technically you have to spend quite a bit of money on to get them up to some sort of a standard. There's a carte blanche, well, you know, if we just leave it hang around for a few years, we can sit on it, we'll get it cheap, council gives a permit, we'll knock it over. So whilst it is it's not in great condition, and the council officers haven't been asking that the cottage be restored to the element that it's habitable. All they've asked is that the front facade sometimes be somehow be retained. There aren't that many examples of these cottages around, and there will become less and less. And whilst it's not in great condition, I just don't think we should be giving the green light to go around knocking them down and putting on new buildings, because there will be none left very soon. So that's why I'm against it.
Thanks for that, Councillor Garner. Other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Henderson?
I think what changed my mind was actually visiting the block and discovering that the owner has been living in this house for the last 6 years. It's his home. Now, on the previous council, I've got a funny feeling I voted to save it when the application before us was slightly different. It was to demolish the whole lot, including the stone work. And it said, oh, you know, keep that, and the new house he wants to build, and I do like the style of the new house, it was very well on the block, the new house can go to the side. Oh, okay, and you just leave the other house, maybe a bit of money comes along all the time and fix it up. Because it didn't look like anyone would be living in it. But yeah, when I visited, and you know, the applicant was very generous and let me and other councillors look around, and I thought that was very decent of him, because it was his home. Can't be an easy place to live in. Houses get old. Some houses have been built to last. That house was probably built as a modest house in its time, like they all were. It's, you know, it's never been a fabulous structure, built of weatherboard. It's served well as a modest home for the last 160 years, and now it's time for it to go. Quite frankly, it's time to replace it with a new, sensitively designed house built with local bricks that have been rescued from old buildings, so carefully restored bricks, I think, and also to put it to the side or put it in a potential flood zone. The place for the house on that block is where the existing house is. They weren't stupid. It's a really nice site, right in the middle, above the waterway, the runway, the water, and that's where the new house should go, in my opinion. I think as a home for the owner to build there, fourth generation in Chewton, even in Pittman Street, I don't think he's a developer going to make a quick buck out of this. I think he's actually going to give himself a decent home at last, and I think we should support that aspiration. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Henderson. Other councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Driscoll.
I'm actually going for the recommendation of the officers. I don't judge people for the way they want to live their life and live in their house. If people want to live in the house in that way, then it's up to them. I think this is a great example of miners' cottage. I think the house was purchased knowing it was a miners' cottage, and I would have the skills to renovate that, and I'm sure there's plenty of other people who have the skills to renovate that. Sorry, are you laughing at me or my comment? Sorry.
Please continue, Councillor Driscoll.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think at all times it was known as a good example as miners' cottage, and it should have been bought with a view to renovate.
Thanks for that, councillor Driscoll. Anyone else wish to speak?
All right, I guess I'll go.
Councillor Anea.
I also went to visit on Friday with some fellow councillors, and it was raining very heavily on Friday. There was no floor in the kitchen. It was drafty. It didn't look like a very nice place to live. I think once it would have been a really lovely cottage, but as Councillor Maltby says, there are many other examples of nice, well-maintained miners' cottages throughout our shire that I think are worth saving. I'm not of a belief that this one is worth saving in the state that it is now. Throughout the officers' report on this, time and time again, they keep coming back to the significance of the cottage is not entirely compromised. And I agree that it is not entirely compromised, but I do think it is compromised to a point where almost a total rebuild is what you would have to do to get it back to a livable condition. This is someone's home. I think it's not a very nice place to live the way it is. I'm really supportive of the plans they have to build their new dwelling. I think they salvaged all these beautiful bricks from old houses. I think it's going to be a really interesting house if it's built, very sympathetic to the area, and not built in a floodplain, which I think is also very important. So I am supportive of an alternate motion.
Thanks for that, councillor Anea. Okay, we have a motion, an alternate motion moved by councillor Maltby. All those in favour? All those against? Motion to demolish the dwelling is carried. Thank you.
Might as well call for a division.
You may call for a division. Those in favour of the motion? Got that, governance? Those against? Thank you very much, governance.
Thank you. Mr. Citizen.
Okay, we're moving along to item 10.3.3. Consider sale of lots 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, 13 and 14. Fitzgerald's Close, Wesley Hill Business Park. You're going to lead us again, are you, councillor Driscoll? Councillors, we have a recommendation, we have a motion. Councillor Maltby.
I'll move the council figures from submitters who are requested to speak to the council in support of their submission regarding the proposal to dispose of lots 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, 13 and 14 with the business park council meeting, and consider all submissions prior to determining at the council meeting on the 15th of June 2021 whether to sell the land.
Thanks for that, councillor Maltby. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Anea. Any objections, councillors?
I'm going to object.
Councillor Gardner, very good. Okay, councillor Maltby, would you like to talk to your motion?
Thought I'd throw that in. Well, I have some questions actually.
No, let Councillor Gardner, I've asked this question, Mr. Mayor. And I'll
All right. Okay, so I'm not really objecting. I suppose I'm still a little bit confused about the process now from him, and I thought I had it now, and I don't. So we've received submissions for and against, correct? In those four, we're getting those. So then during the next month, we will see and or hear who wants to buy it. Is this correct? Is this how we go? No. So this is why I'm getting confused. Maybe I've forgotten when we went through it.
Okay, the CEO will respond to the question. Mr. Fuzzo, please.
Thanks, Mayor. So tonight is just purely to allow you to have heard from anybody who wanted to speak to you, which we heard earlier. And this report is purely to capture all of the submissions that have been received by council under what used to be called a Section 223 process. So you're familiar with that, Councillor Gardner. This is the process effectively that we're following. So at the June meeting, we will present to you a report with a recommendation that you will then consider, and that's when you will be making a decision about whether you wish to proceed to release these properties for sale or not. Following that point, the properties, if approved by council to go back on the market, will then be released for public sale as they were prior to this hold being put on the properties a little while ago for the purpose of investigating the depot feasibility.
Okay. I'm happy to withdraw my objection.
Okay, so are there any objections to the what's before us? You wish to speak to a councillor?
The process is now starting to get the development moving and finished, hopefully. And look, the work space idea is worthy of us councillors considering it when we on the 15th of June. Or the meeting before, in that period. If we don't.
This is why I was asking.
I'm right, we on the 15th of June could say we only want to sell 3 or 4 blocks, couldn't we?
That's correct, Mayor. So we'll be offering you a recommendation, and you will determine what, if any, blocks out of what's still available you wish to make available for sale. Recognising that Workspace has put a proposition that it's not quite sale, and you may wish to make a comment about that in that meeting, or a decision about that in the meeting as well, or not.
Similarly, we may say that the other people that spoke to us, we could turn lot 5, 6 and 7 into a nature wildlife park.
That will be up to you, councillors, yes.
Thank you for that. Thank
Cool.
you.
Any other councillors wish to speak on this matter? My only comment is that it takes council a fair while to sell anything, particularly blocks of land. So with that said, we'll now have a vote on Councillor Maltby's motion. All those in favour? There being no objection, I declare the matter carried. Thank you. We'll get Councillor Driscoll back in. Thank you, Governance. Thanks for joining us again, Councillor Driscoll. It's great to have you back. Okay, moving on to item 11 on the agenda, delegates' reports. Anyone wish to make a report? That's good. CEO, do you wish to talk to your report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councillors, you have got that usual report of the Mayor's and my activities since the last meeting. And I'll just pick up on 1 or 2 items on there, Mayor, if I may. But before I do that, did want to acknowledge, of course, that it is Volunteer Week this week, and I'm not telling you anything when I say this, but I do think it's worthy of acknowledgement that we have an extraordinary range of volunteers in our community who are incredibly generous with their time and their energy and even their money to support us in supporting this community. And there is no question that we could not do our services the way that we do them if we didn't have that very generous volunteer base. So I just wanted to say thank you very much to all of you who make the difference in so many people's lives in our community by helping us to deliver the services and managed facilities on our behalf. Last week, Mayor, was another good week, of course, and you may wish to talk about some of that, but we had some terrific announcements from our great friend Marie Edwards, who has helped us once again to secure some pretty significant funding for a couple of projects in the Shire. And Mayor, it looks like you may wish to talk about those, so I won't, but fantastic.
I'm happy for you to talk.
Thank you, Mayor. Of course, we started off in Newstead on, I think it was Wednesday, where Marie announced 1.2 $1.4 million with, Councillor Driscoll was there as well, announced $1.4 million worth of funding towards 3 more of our small towns getting a bit of a facelift and a bit of a spruce up to make them easier and safer to get around. So that was Newstead, Chewton and Guildford, which followed from the previous 3 that we had funded from the state also. So that rounds out all of the small town works that we've been looking at, in addition to the ones like the Malden Streetscape. We clearly have a few more things to do around Harcourt and also Castlemaine that we'll be showing there in the future. But it was a fantastic announcement from Marie Edwards, and a big thanks to our friends at Regional Development Victoria for that one as well. But then, and I wasn't there for this one there, but the announcement down at Campbell's Creek for the trail extension down there to complete the last section of the Campbell's Creek Trail was fantastic news as well. And not just that section, but all the way out to the Campbell's Creek Recreation Reserve, about 6 kilometres of trail has now been funded. Another $1.1 million in funding there from.
What I like, CEO, was that just prior to that, there was a report in the local paper with a bunch of upset locals saying, why don't you fund that last bit of the trail, and followed up hot on the heels for the announcement we got the money. So great timing.
Yeah, and we've certainly had a lot of drive out of people like the Friends of Campbell's Creek, who was another fantastic volunteer group in our community there. They've been pushing for that project for a very long time, and they've done a huge amount of work along that creek reserve for a very long time. So great achievement by them as well. And again, a big thanks to the Sport and Rec Victoria people who've supported that project, as well as Marie Edwards. Yeah, just on here, quickly, sorry for going on, but just on here, there are a couple of items on there that relate to something I know is a great passion of every councillor here, is what do we do to take advantage of the big housing build that's happening across the state. And there's a couple of projects a couple of meetings you can see that Director Holt and I have had, in particular in recent times, one with the chairman and the CEO of Haven, to talk to them about how they're going about taking advantage of this huge amount of money that the state's put on the table for housing, how they're going to help bring that to our region and to our shire, or how they could, as well as talking to the incredibly highly mobilised My Home Network, what their thoughts are as part of Council using some money that we've been able to secure from Homes Victoria to get, for want of a better term, a housing officer on staff for a period of time to really make sure that we do take the best advantage possible of that big opportunity that the state has on the table for more social and affordable housing in our shire. So I just wanted to mention that, Mayor. That's a pretty exciting opportunity for us, a lot of work for us to do there, but terrific that we'll be able to develop get a position in place inside the organisation that's never existed before for a period of time to try and progress that project. Man, happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, CEO. I'd just like to acknowledge the work that Darren Fuzzo has been doing on our behalf in a lot of these areas, like the announcements last week, where we got 1.4 for the streetscape of small towns, the 1.1, it's over 1.1 for the Campbell's Creek Trail. We're working very hard on the housing build. We're also working hard to do something with Castlemaine Health on a health hub. Our CEO has been working tirelessly on these initiatives, and to see the funding coming through for important projects that, you know, if you think about the Campbell's Creek Link project, families from Campbell's Creek and Castlemaine and surrounds will have a fantastic experience being able to, walk those trails or ride bikes with their kids, without having to go on the road. Like with that one, the scope of the project's been expanded to go down as far as Campbell's Creek Recreation Reserve. So it's just going to be an absolutely fantastic experience for family people and people that want to get fit, to get them off the road. And this is a project that Council has aspired to for some time, But, you know, we're getting it, and we're not having to spend ratepayer money to achieve it. So it's taxpayer money, but it's coming back through the state government, and I commend them for the funding that they've allocated to us in the last couple of weeks. It's just fantastic, and we're going to see some really great projects. The streetscape project's going to revitalise Newstead, Chewton and Guildford. I remember when the Guildford, we made the community plans when I was first on council, so it's about 7 years ago. We had this bunch of old guys come in from Guildford, and they wanted to plant trees. And, you know, it really, when you see old guys wanting to plant trees and make the place look beautiful, they're not doing it for themselves, they're doing it for future generations. And I just think to see those projects through to fruition is just fantastic. So well done to all concerned, and I really look forward to those projects building on the other work that we've been doing. So congratulations, CEO. It's been a big week. I hope we have another good week like that soon. Okay. Councillors, any questions for the CEO?
Can I just tell a little story about the Campbell's Creek Trail? The initial idea for it was dreamed up by a member of the Friends of Campbell's Creek Lakey group. Some might know him, Ian Higgins. And the cynics said, oh, it's just so his son can ride to primary school along the trail. That son is now a teacher at Castlemaine North. So we can see it's been a long-held desire to finish that trail.
Great story. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Any other delegates' reports this evening? No, it's all quiet. Notices of motion, nil. Urgent special business, nil. Confidential items, nil. Meeting closed at 10 to 8.